This podcast is brought to you by Ceridian. In human resources, you have to be compliance people, but you get into the business because you are people. You have to comply with labor laws for different employee types, locations, and situations. And the rules keep changing. Is there a system that can help you simplify compliance so that you can focus on people? Yes, there is. Ceridian's human capital management software helps you stay ahead of compliance challenges. Visit ceridian.com/HR to learn more. Ceridian, intelligence at work.
Around, June or July of last year, in the middle of COVID, I gathered my HRWize team for a backyard social distanced gathering to talk about what 2021 was going to look like for us. And honestly, all the topics that came out were personal. They were personal to us. They weren't necessarily, which market are we going to hit and what industries? And they were just like, who do we want to work with? We want to work with clients who care about specific themes and charities and that kind of thing. And diversity was one of the things that really connected my existing team to each other. And we decided to drive that way, to start talking about it, to not be afraid of having opinions.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Hacking HR podcast. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging are perhaps some of the most important conversations that HR leaders, HR professionals, and basically every company in the world should be having right now. It's not a new topic, but it's been put on the table recently with way more strength than before because of all that's been going on around the world with inequity and inequality that has been unearthed by COVID, the Black Lives Matter movement and Me Too movement in the United States that has, of course, escalated around the world. So these are very, very powerful conversations that we should be having. So I'm very happy to welcome Sally, who is passionate about driving organizational growth through identifying great candidates for each key role in the organization, but doing so keeping in mind all that is related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So Sally, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much. It's a privilege to have you. And let me just start by asking you this question. Why do you think diversity and inclusion has become such an important topic of conversation and action in the workplace? Not only in 2021, it's been going on for a few years now, but 2021 seems to be like the year of this conversation.
Yeah, I think it's a mix of a lot of things. You nailed it. Worldwide events that surfaced, not that started happening, but really that surfaced because they were always happening and we just weren't paying as much attention as we should have. So around, June or July of last year, in the middle of COVID, I gathered my HRWize team for a backyard social distanced gathering to talk about what 2021 was going to look like for us. And honestly, all the topics that came out were personal. They were personal to us. They weren't necessarily, which market are we going to hit and what industries? And they were just like, who do we want to work with? We want to work with clients who care about specific themes and charities and that kind of thing. And diversity was one of the things that really connected my existing team to each other. And we decided to drive that way, to start talking about it, to not be afraid of having opinions. I think we were all raised to think that business is business. And I'm trying to kind of challenge that and say, you know what? Nope, business is actually personal. We're all humans behind all of this. And as humans, we have a social responsibility. And that's where I think the conversation should begin.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're saying something that is so powerful. In the past, we may have considered that businesses should be caring about business and nothing else. But now we see a wave of organizations, especially private organizations, taking a stance on important social and political issues going on in the world. Like here in the United States, with the many states are trying to pass laws that prevent people from voting, and we see private companies now saying, you do that, I'm out of here, right? So I think organizations are becoming much more uh, in sync, if you will, with the realities of society and the world. So let me ask you this: how do you think we should act on diversity and inclusion? Because this is a very important question to me, and probably for the audience as well, because very often we talk about it, but when we go to the action, the gap is as big as the gap in the workplace when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
So how do we move from talking about it to acting on it?
I think the first shift actually has to go from embracing it to promoting it. So, and when I say embracing it is, even internally amongst our team, if I bring up diversity, or if I had brought up diversity a few years past, the response, and not negatively so, but the response would have been, look around, Sally, we're so diverse already. And so I think a lot of people have that hat on of like, hey, we're in Canada, we're international, we've got so many diverse hats. But we need to shift now from embracing diversity to promoting diversity. So how are we going to go one step further, and rather than simply welcoming those who apply, seeking out those who do not have the opportunity to apply? So I think that's the shift that we have to start by making, being aware that you may be very, very diverse already, and that's a wonderful place to begin. But actually, the diversity topic is about going one step further with regards to your social responsibility and actually seeking out further diversity. So, for example, we talk about diversity, and the things that come to mind are women in the workplace, gender in the workplace, and culture in the workplace, nationalities. We don't often talk about age. And when we do, it's about people coming out of school that maybe don't have as many opportunities as someone who's more established, but we don't often talk about people who are close to retirement and their likelihood of getting an important job. We don't often talk about schooling. So if your job description says that you require a university degree, it might actually require a university degree, but be aware that what you're creating there is injustice, because you are closing the door to everyone who perhaps didn't have the opportunity to even get to the level of going to university. So if you have two jobs there and 50% of that job does require knowledge from a university degree, that's awesome. But is there an opportunity to shift that so that you make one of those jobs fully university required, and the other 50% combined it into one job that is not university required? So now we're creating a job that opens more doors. And then where do we go seek them out? So not necessarily posting universities. Where are you posting where people don't have as many opportunities? So to answer your questions, how do we do that? The very first step is shifting from embracing to seeking and promoting diversity. And after that, finding the gaps within your organizations.
Sally, the concept of seeking diversity is really powerful. And I am thinking that it's not just seeking diversity outside of the company, but very often inside of your own walls. Companies don't seek diversity beyond what we consider diversity, as in gender or ethnicity or backgrounds, but the diversity of the conversations that should happen in the organization to solve some of the complex problems they have. And seeking that is equivalent to being intentional about building that diversity. And very often you don't see that happening. You want everybody to get aligned with whatever you want to do, and that's pretty much it, right? So I think that as you start seeking diversity outside of the organization, also to bring a diverse workforce, you got to leave those values within the organization as well, because then otherwise you're going to be bringing diverse talent, and they will be gone down the road in a year after they were hired, because they find, what, I am a Latino, or I am a people of color or person of color, and I got into this company and my voice is never heard, right? So they talked about diversity as in, let me find diverse candidates. But when it comes into the culture of this organization, it's like very one-sided, right? So how do you combat that? How do you fight not only seeking diversity outside to bring diverse candidates, but also to build a culture that values diversity?
I think that all starts with the recruitment process, because one thing that you mentioned is the word intentional, which I think is super important in everything that we do. So it's being intentional in the recruitment process as well as throughout the onboarding. And when I say the recruitment process, and I'm learning every day, I don't think any of us are perfect, but when I hired one of my employees a few years back, I was talking about hiring for quote unquote culture. And her response was, I don't love that. And I was like, really? Okay, challenge me. What is this about? Why do you not love that? And she goes, because there's this perception of when you're hiring for culture that actually all you're doing, you might be hiring diverse profiles to your point, but you're fitting them all in the same box. So their personality, they're driven, they're this, they're that. When in reality, we all work entirely differently. And just because one person is less outspoken than another doesn't make them less contributed to your organization, less powerful, less smart. It doesn't matter, right? So she really kind of triggered me there to be careful with my words when we say we hire for culture. So it starts at the recruitment process. It's making sure that in the recruitment process, we are mindful that just because a candidate does not behave one way or another does not mean they will not be able to contribute one way or another to the organization. And then once they're within the organization, it's having outlets within your organization that promote that kind of contribution. So an example is we've got something called the Center of Innovation. And our Center of Innovation is where we cook up ideas, and 50% of them fail and the other 50% don't. They succeed. They turn into HRWize as an example. But the point is, there is somewhere within the organization where people of any level are welcomed and asked to come up with ideas that could be efficient time savings, or they can be the next line of business or whatever it is. But it's creating opportunities within the organization outside of the realm of the person's current, of the employee's current job, to challenge the employee to think outside the box. And then you can start hearing voices in different ways. And of course, we always have different channels, making sure that you've got, your CEO on board, that he's the biggest culture champion, that he has conversations with employees of all levels, that doors are always open, and that you're really kind of abolishing those hierarchical perceptions that make it so that some people may never be heard.
Yeah, I love all that you said. There's so much to unpack there, and we're getting close to the end of our conversation. But you said something that I think and feel, because of my own background and some of the experiences that I went through as a professional in my career. Those creative outlets, they, in my view, and you're validating some of that, is they are a fantastic way to live in the values of diversity. It is telling people, we're gonna find the spaces for you to come up with the ideas, to maybe experiment and test with some of those ideas, and be okay if they fail. Just learn from the experience and grow from there. And also be okay if you now have to take on another project that came out of your or somebody else's idea. I think that is so powerful. And I went through experiences in my career where all of those outlets were generally shut down, and the organization was like, we are a diverse organization. No, you're not. I mean, just posting that you are seeking diverse candidates, that's not enough. I mean, you got to leave those values within. So Sally, let me ask you this question to wrap up our conversation. If there was one thing that you could tell HR leaders, focus on this one thing. I know I don't want to oversimplify the world, but the bandwidth for everybody is limited, right? So if there was one thing that you tell HR leaders, focus on this one thing, and if you get it done, this year will have been awesome for you as an HR leader and for your organization, what would that thing be?
That is the hardest question.
I know.
It's a trick question too. So I will generalize it, but it'll still be one thing. So I challenge every HR professional out there, once they've looked inwards and saw what their population looks like, is to see, where am I lacking, and go find them. So not just post a job on your website waiting for passive candidates. If you are mindful, and I will admit that we are mindful, for example, that perhaps we could do more for the Aboriginal community. If you're mindful that there is a group that is absolutely not represented in your organization, make an effort to go seek out that specific group, and you will be amazed at the synergies that will be created by seeking out that group, and what that group, when they join you, will do for you, to expand and help you expand diversity. So that would be my one challenge to HR professionals.
I love that. And I have seen some organizations explicitly saying, we have this position and it's for a woman. Guys, we know you're great. Don't apply, because this won't be for you. This is for a woman. I love that. And now you got to dig a little deeper into that, right? I mean, a woman of color, or a woman from, X region of the world that you don't have represented in your company. So I absolutely love that. Sally, thank you so much for spending this time with me. Great conversation.
Thank you. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Hacking HR podcast. See you all soon. Thank you, everybody, for watching or listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please follow us on our social media and subscribe to our newsletter so that you can stay informed of all the things that we're putting together for you from the Hacking HR community. Thank you so much. Please continue to stay safe, stay well, stay strong, and we will see you soon.